Alright guys, who broke the robot?
Hello everyone, I'm a Broken Robot. Welcome back to the channel. It's the unfortunate truth that survival crafting games have taken a bit of a back seat in the world of modern console and PC gaming. While games like Minecraft, Rust, Terraria still dominate the world of popular gaming, an oversaturation of the genre in the late 2010s left many developers and fans on two sides of a somewhat similar coin. There were games like Minecraft which were based entirely on sandbox, and it kind of left the player to use their own imagination to get the most out of their time. And then there were games like Subnautica that used crafting elements to advance the plot of a linear story while promoting exploration of a pretty open world. However, even today, with every indie game studio having survival crafting slapped in their game's bio, there has been an overall blandness to the genre, which led me to return to a game that I had played in spurs over the last 8 years or so. That game is 7 Days to Die. Before I can get into the meat and potatoes of this review, we first need to focus on the muddled and tarnished development of this game. 7 Days to Die was started in late 2011 by a small group of game developing teams mostly led by the game development company known as Funpimps, with most of these teams having less than a dozen staff members and funds being supplied entirely by these teams, making the process for 7 Days to Die very slow and taking way longer than most of the staff originally wanted. Funpimps originally planned on 7 Days to Die being released in full alpha by the end of 2012, but unfortunately due to monetary constraints and a lack of manpower, this ambitious due date could not be held. During development, 7 Days to Die was spearheaded by Funpimp's own personal game engine, but after realizing it just wasn't in the budget or the right time frame, the team switched over to the Unity engine, which anyone who's played games before will know that the Unity engine has delivered us some of the greatest and worst games of all time. Finally, after years of on and off work, in late 2013 the game was released. When the game was released in early alpha, it definitely showed. It was a crude and occasionally ugly game that in many ways looked similar to any other survival crafting game startup from the early 2010s. But what set 7 Days to Die apart from its competition was the sheer attention to detail that helped it gain a small but loud cult following. Fans of the early alpha enjoyed the aspects of the game that helped it reach its final release. Fans of role-playing games were able to immerse themselves in a post-apocalyptic world where no two encounters were ever truly alike, all while fortifying pre-generated building locations littered across the map that were infested with zombies. People that were more fans of the building aspects of survival crafting games were able to not only alter these pre-rendered buildings to fortify and change as they saw fit, but there were so many various crafting recipes and block types to use to build that you could build some pretty incredible shelters. Keep in mind that all this is going on while managing a wide variety of clothing, weapons, crafting recipes, and survival aspects to keep you busy for hours. Shoot, I've played the game for almost 8 years now and I still haven't looked over nearly half of the crafting recipes. This blend of role-playing, exploration, and survival aspects helped 7 Days to Die stand out from the growing crowd of indie games. What truly saved 7 Days to Die, however, was the Let's Play community who brought much attention to the game's development. Let's Players like Markiplier and Jacksepticeye littered YouTube with a couple of Let's Plays around mid-2014. In fact, in November 2014, the game was fully released, with the occasional content and graphics update taking place over the following years, adding more for the players to enjoy. And now, without further notice, let's talk about the flawed masterpiece that is 7 Days to Die. Now, the air-quote story behind 7 Days to Die to this day has never fully been explained, but bits and pieces of lore are sprinkled across the map by ambitious developers that help players help paint a picture. This was done deliberately so that, much like in games like Minecraft and Rust, a player can make their own story, with some world elements playing into the effect. 7 Days to Die takes place in modern-day Arizona. From newspaper clippings and notes found across the map, we learned that at some point a zombie virus broke out which killed about 25% of the world's population. In a last-ditch effort to control the outbreak, world governments began using nuclear warheads to neutralize large amounts of zombies with mixed success. Unfortunately, in the process between the zombie virus and the nuclear warheads, most of the world was uninhabitable. You, the player, wake up one day naked and alone in front of one of the few habitable sections of the world. You then learn from a note on your body that you were rescued by a growing group of survivors that want to watch you survive from a distance to see if they can welcome you into their group. There are also supply planes that drop high-tier loot once every few weeks, but as the days go on, these planes become more and more uncommon. This is actually a really nice touch because it helps the world building, showing that through the zombie infestation of the world and in the post-nuclear world, the remnants of the military are still trying to give supplies to survivors, with mixed success. In layman's terms, these are used mostly as tutorials and very rarely advance any sort of story. As you, the player, travel the map, you will explore all kinds of buildings and areas which will allow you to form your own story. While there are a handful of small settlements manned by greedy traders that use casino tokens as currency, besides notes and treasure maps and the occasional corpse you might talk to, you're all alone in this world. The main map in 7 Days to Die is divided up along 6 major biomes, which all have their own unique enemies, buildings, and environmental effects. The first biome is the forest, a lush green area full of trees and awesome rock formations. This biome is the easiest to survive in, and while there aren't many pre-generated structures for you to cower in during the night, the abundance of resources make this a good area to set up your main base in, whether you are fortifying a pre-generated structure or tactically building your own base in a specific area. In terms of enemies, the forest has the lowest zombie generation rate, and besides the occasional wild animal to hunt, you'll mostly be alone. In the forest, it's important to stick to main roads in order to find structures to scavenge through, but occasionally if you find yourself wandering off the beat path, you can spend crucial time wandering towards a road or a sign or anything really, just to find nothing. The next biome is the plains, a dry area which has the unique environmental effect of overheating your character, requiring them to either wear more comfortable clothing or drinking more water. The plains, while absent of trees, has a large amount of pre-generated structures, ranging from police stations to supermarkets. While these locations will always be accompanied by a small mob of zombies, the risk and reward of every location is a case-on-case basis. Plains biome is also home to the yucca fruit, which while it doesn't fill up your hunger as much, it's a nice balance to the environmental hazards that take place. The desert is very similar to the plains, only with a higher chance to overheat and less yucca fruits to harvest. The desert is a great biome to explore, however being littered with dozens of small buildings and neighborhoods, it is easy to get lost. Overall, the desert isn't the greatest biome to set up shop in, but certainly a great one to explore if you're just passing through. A benefit to the desert, however, is that the flat terrain makes it much easier to spot enemies unlike other biomes with tall grass and trees blocking your view. The burnt forest is the smallest biome in the map, with an eerie scorched earth look. Very few structures exist in this biome, and while there are plenty of trees and rocks formations for you to gather resources from, on most occasions the high spawn rate of enemies in this lot makes it extremely risky. On top of everything, small fires left burning on the ground are a major environmental hazard. If you're careless, you'll find yourself burning to death before any zombie can get close to you. This biome is easily my least favorite since its place in the world feels out of character. I understand that there was a nuclear war, but I'm pretty sure that doesn't cause a random strip of the forest to burn forever. The Wasteland is a prime example of risk versus reward. The Wasteland is an eerie part of the map, littered with crumbling buildings, ruined cars, and all kinds of destruction. While this biome is littered with resources, very few defendable structures still stand, and there is a higher enemy spawn rate for tougher enemies, which normally only come on horde nights. The final biome is located in the upper right-hand corner of the map. The snow biome, much like the wasteland and desert, is a nice area to explore. Trying to set up a permanent base in the area is a nightmare. The cold conditions of the area make your character constantly suffering from hypothermia, and despite having multiple campfires and winter coats, your character will never truly be comfortable in this area. The local zombie population also gets an odd buff from the cold weather, making them harder to kill and better at breaking your defenses. The snow biome does have some important locations like a mountaintop mansion and 2 small towns located adjacent to one another, but in most of my playthroughs I simply ignore this area, it's just not worth it in my opinion. While the zombie genre has been oversaturated with variations and quirks to try and make their zombie apocalypse more intense, the developers of 7 Days to Die took a more simple, linear approach which helps keep the game's atmosphere intact. The most common enemy is the basic zombie, which spawns in every biome. While some are slightly tougher than the others, this correlates with the loot found on the body of the fallen enemies. Zombies when alone are nothing more than a nuisance to distract you from whatever task you were originally doing, but in groups of 3 or more they can become a real problem. I found that in many cases it was simply easier to lead larger groups of zombies away from an area I wanted to explore and simply return in a large loop, losing the zombies and making the area easier to explore. There are, however, some variants to the zombies. There are the previously mentioned Snow Lumberjack zombie, which have a major health buff and resistance to melee weapons, but when taken down are more likely to have a greater loot spawn rate. There are also burnt zombies located in the Burning Forest biome. These zombies are slower than your standard zombie, but when striking the player they light them on fire, damaging the player and their armor more than a normal zombie strike. There are also spider zombies, which were added in the later updates. These variants of zombies can climb walls and won't be stunned by melee attacks. The spider zombie mostly only spawns in the urban city area of the map, but occasionally they will show up on horde nights. The next zombie variant is the cop zombie, which is a larger, slow, lumbering target which spews acid, dealing massive damage to your defenses. On top of it all, when you kill this zombie, they will explode, destroying almost anything in its path. The final variant, the feral zombie, is the apex predator of 7 Days to Die. They make little noise and run all the time, even during the day. They have a high HP cap and can easily break through wooden barricades, at a fraction of the time it takes a normal player. While you scavenge the massive map of 7 Days to Die, collecting resources and loot, you'll eventually have to set up shop somewhere. While most players will simply fortify a pre-built location, you have the option to build your own base from scrap. Your building materials range from wood to scrap metal to concrete for the more hardcore players. And when it comes to cosmetics, you have a wide variety to choose from, including decorative paintings and furniture you can loot from across the map, and stuff like houseplants, which adds a nice little touch to any base. While you have a wide variety of building materials and options, most players will stick to the basic materials of cobblestone, wood, and scrap metal, as materials like concrete, iron, and brick cost a lot of resources, which only come from specific biomes, making them very impractical to use in long term. Now, the actual building mechanics of 7 Days to Die, while clunky at times, has a sort of nostalgic feeling of games like Animal Crossing and early titles in The Sims. For console and Mac players, it will take a little bit more time and attention to carefully craft a detailed base, but for Steam and PC players that have had the game streamlined via mods and updates, the mechanics will be just fine. On top of basic and cosmetic crafting recipes, there are also traps you can use to defend your base. These traps mostly consist of static traps that enemies will have to walk into to cause damage. These include spikes, barbed wire, and spikes again, but this time made of metal. There are also traps such as landmines and flame traps, but these usually cost a lot of expensive resources, meaning that they are only really practically used on Horde nights, and in desperate situations. What most players love about 7 Days to Die is how, unlike in other survival crafting games, the enemies can also destroy blocks, meaning that every morning you have to manually check every section of your defenses to ensure your base's safety. There are non-hostile and hostile animals that roam the map for you to hunt. Some of these animals are more common than the others, with pigs and deer and chickens being non-hostile mobs that you'll encounter in almost every biome, while the hostile bear mob will only spawn in the snow and forest biome. Bears are tanky and deal high damage, meaning it's almost better to simply avoid them rather than waste resources only taking them down. If you keep your distance, they'll leave you alone. Dogs are another animal that are hostile towards you, and they have a very low HP. In fact, later in the game, if you've upgraded your melee stats enough, you'll have the ability to one-shot most dogs. The issue is that early in the game, their high speed and high damage makes them a nightmare for most players, causing them to avoid entire areas of the map altogether. Now that we've got the finer details out of the way, let's talk about the actual gameplay. 7 Days to Die is not a pretty game to look at. It's simply the unfortunate truth that the game started in 2011, then switched engines twice. Even with cosmetic updates occasionally taking place every year or so, it's still stuck in that early Unity engine feel, which just kind of makes everything have like a melted plastic look. 7 Days to Die won't hold up to the standards of games released today, but if you're willing to overlook some graphical discrepancies, then you can fully immerse yourself in the world, being a roleplay gamer's paradise. Every player's playthrough is 100% unique, with every building's loot and enemy count being random. Sometimes you'll encounter long-forgotten cabins in the woods with no enemies in sight, and sometimes you'll come across a supermarket with 30 zombies chilling out front. Combat is something that's left up to a player's own creativity. You can simply barge into a location with melee and ranged weapons, or you can use stealth to sneak into locations. But in all of my playthroughs, I've had very little success sneaking, as breaking blocks, walking on certain surfaces, and even shining lights or torches and flashlights will alert zombies within a various distance. An important factor in exploration is that most buildings are not lit up, and the ones that are have windows that cast large shadows that make corners and adjacent rooms pitch black, making scavenging through buildings nearly impossible without some sort of light source. While exploring locations or traveling across the map, you'll need to manage your food and thirst bar, with a wide variety of items. However, things like breaking bones, being infected by the zombie virus, or eating spoiled food will require specialty healing items, which are rare and difficult to craft, making it imperative that you constantly monitor your health. It's also important to keep an eye on the standards of your clothing and tools, as they're all interconnected in your survival. When you spawn in the game, at first you'll have 100 health and 100 stamina. This can be raised by completing various tasks that improve your standard of living, ranging from eating more healthy and nutritious meals to taking vitamins, which are littered across the map. However, it's much easier to lower your health and stamina cap, then gain it back, as breaking bones, being too hot or cold, or having a poor diet will slowly lower your health and stamina cap. Additionally to your various player stats to manage along with your base, you also have to manage your equipment. The stone axe will be the main workhorse of your tool set, with things like iron and metal tools becoming more available in the late game. Weapons are more diverse than basic tools, however. Weapons are more common to be found in lootable containers, with each one having specific positives and negative stats. An example would be the Iron Club, my personal favorite weapon to use in the early game. This is a powerful and somewhat easy to craft weapon, but it has a very high repair cost. Another example would be the hunting knife, which doubles as a deadly weapon and a tool for butchering hunted animals. However, it has a very small range, forcing you to get up close and personal with your enemies. Guns are very rare, and in most cases you'll be forced to craft them rather than find them in good condition out in the wasteland. Guns like the hunting rifle and pistol are best used at far ranges, while shotguns and assault rifles are better used in close combat. No matter what weapon you're using, however, it's imperative that you ration your ammunition sparingly. Overall, the mix of exploration and base building makes 7 Days to Die a great game to pick up for a week or two, and then put down, only to pick up again in a year or so. For non-casual gamers, 7 Days to Die is a perfect fit, as the game is constantly increasing its difficulty as the days move on, meaning that the challenges of the world will never fully disappear. You may build multiple highly fortified forts and use mini bikes to travel across the map in a few short minutes, but the rising number of zombies will always cancel out your progress. Now, unfortunately, 7 Days to Die isn't a perfect game. In fact, 7 Days to Die is a very buggy game. The game's enemies will get caught on anything and be stuck in motion, all while other enemies will glitch through walls, making all your defenses and preparations useless in the first place. A major bug that still hasn't been fixed to this day is on some horde nights the zombies will spawn under the map, leaving you staring across the horizon waiting for the horde to come. Many players often complained about the perk and skill tree in the game, which I hardly mentioned before. As you complete random tasks, you slowly gain skill points that can be used to upgrade various skills, ranging from increased skill with melee weapons to crafting new recipes. In the first parts of the game, you'll rack up more points than you'll know what to do with. Unfortunately, the perk tree caps at level 50, meaning that you'll no longer be able to gain perk points or additional crafting recipes later in the game. Most of these bugs and gameplay issues can be ignored, and from what I've read online, most of these are console and Mac exclusive issues. But there are entire pages on Reddit dedicated to documenting glitches in 7 Days to Die. I'll leave a link down below. In conclusion, 7 Days to Die is a rare gem of a game, mixing so many different styles of games with the wide variety of play styles and options, making it a good fit for anyone, whether you're a hardcore fan of the zombie genre or a casual player picking it up for the first time. The Horde Nights every 7 days is a unique aspect which helps the game stand out over the other zombie and survival crafting games. The unique areas of the world, along with the wide variety of biomes and buildings with the utmost attention to detail, help 7 Days to Die shine despite its graphical shortcomings. While the lack of story direction may frustrate a handful of players, the sandbox and role-playing elements make up for these minor inconveniences. While the glitches and poor graphics will make many PC gamers cringe and return to playing League of Legends, gamers who can see through this can enjoy the world of 7 Days to Die to the fullest. And with that being said, in my humble opinion, I'd give 7 Days to Die a solid 7 out of 10. It's not a perfect game by any stretch of the word, but it is a good game nonetheless. And with that being said, I hope you all enjoyed this video. If you've stuck around this long, I'd like to politely ask you to like and subscribe. The channel's been growing fast and I appreciate all your feedback on previous videos. Leave a comment down below, give me some video ideas, guys. Let me know what kinds of videos you want to see on the channel. Have a great day, drink some water, and stay cool.